Yeah, hi, I'm John-Paul Hughes. I've quite a few familiar faces in here that will know who I am. And there's an old adage that we're all very familiar with, that if something ain't broke, then don't try and fix it. And those of you in here who know me will know that that comes as no surprise that I fundamentally disagree with that. Because there's one thing that I know for sure, having spent many years in creative industries, is that the minute you think you've discovered a creative formula, it's no longer creative. It's there to be discovered, to be copied, to be imitated, to become predictable. And as part of that, within that formula, some of you will know that there's the kind of legendary ambient composer and producer Brian Eno had a series of oblique strategy cards that he used to use that would probe you into different creative directions. And one of those cards actually reads, discover your formulas and abandon them. And that is actually the fundamental principle that we used that led to the creation of the sound of Arnold Clark. Because within, if there's one thing that we know for sure, that it's that really being creative isn't risky. It's a phrase that we hear often, oh, we're taking a risk with this, well, that's a bit risky, something's going to be there. The riskiest thing you can do in creative is play it safe. Because what you do is you run the risk of creating marketing, creating advertising, creating branding that goes unnoticed, that nobody pays any attention to. And that's actually the fundamental purpose of any advertising, marketing or branding, is to gain attention. So within that, this is, Arnold Clark has always been a very serious radio advertiser. They spend big and have always spent big on airtime, on promotions, on sponsorships, on all these different elements. And being creative, when I talk about being creative isn't risky, and changing not for change's sake, it's an easy thing to do when you're behind as a challenger brand, to try something new, to move in new directions, to try and see if you can upset the apple cart a little bit. But when you're in a position of strength, when you're at the front of that market, then it takes knowledge, it takes confidence, it takes assuredness in where you want to go. And that was something that Arnold Clark really embraced with them when we first brought the idea to them about opening up and creating their own sound. Because, again, I think Lucy touched on it there, this ever-expanding audio landscape. And when we sat down together, we realised that what it was creating was not just more opportunities to reach consumers, but actually much more consumer touch points than we had ever seen before. And within those consumer touch points, what it brings is a load more opportunities to create these branded moments that never existed before. And within that, once we had done that, we knew that, so that this wasn't actually about Arnold Clark changing their audio strategy for the sake of change. It was about taking control of their brand sound. It was about taking how they sound as seriously as how they look, and ultimately making the sound of Arnold Clark as iconic over a period of time as those little yellow and black stickers you see in the back of just about every single car in Scotland and the territories in which Arnold Clark tend to work. So within that, we'd worked with them, and from there we got involved with our partners at Massive Music and brought in these guys to help develop the sound of Arnold Clark, which all began, as Paul will talk you through now, with this process.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people get a bit scared when they think about audio branding or sonic branding. Oh my God, what are we going to do? This is a great big process. It's going to take ages. It's going to cost a load of money. And that kind of fear creeps in. But the process, basically, I'm not going to talk you through the entire process, but the process is basically pretty analogous to a visual design process. So what we do, because we very much understand music and sound is very difficult to talk about, we get together and work hand in hand. As when we first met, we talked about the possibilities of sound. We had a look at the brand, a dive into the touch points, as JP mentioned, explored the landscape, explored what everyone else was doing. Because all brands, if you work with a brand or for a brand, it makes noise. It makes loads and loads of noise. When you start to collate all those moments of sound, put them together, you realise generally how inconsistent you are. You look the same, you sound completely different on many different channels. So we did this exercise. We found they had actually a really good, strong music strategy already in place. But we looked at the competition and we could see there was lots of mimicking happening. People were trying to copy them. So it was very hard for Arnold Clark to consistently be distinctive throughout their entire, throughout all their touch points. So what we do is basically we go through this process, and then at a certain point we sit down and go, right, okay, we've found out these are the stories of your brand. These are the stories from Arnold Clark. These are the stories that mean things to us. And we start to build out what is basically a brief. We've been working for, I don't know, 3-4 months by this point. We haven't written any music. And we sit down and we listen to music and we start to develop design territories. And you can see the design territories here. We literally build these out and go, well, what does human confidence sound like? What does optimism and joy sound like? And we listen to this music together. We hold hands, not physically.
We did a lot.
We did a little bit, yeah. We're basically holding hands to guide through that entire process. So everyone's very comfortable at talking about music. And then at a certain point, we're able to build out what is a brief. And it's only at that point, some months on, we actually get into the studio and start creating the actual sound of Arnold Clark.
And that was one of the big moments, wasn't it, when we kind of start to move past that. And I think, Emily, for you as a client and head of media there, the Arnold Clark brand is something that's it obviously northern upon the Northern Territories is obviously where you operate. It's something that's a household name.
Yeah.
So through this process, it must have felt like how did it feel to kind of hand control that over a little bit to?
I think exactly what you just said there. North of the border, we're confident, we know who we are. Majority of people know who Arnold Clark are. Mm-hmm. But the plan to grow the brand in England is still something that we're focusing on and a continuous aim for the company. So to develop the brand identity, although, like you said, Paul, we've had a strong visual brand identity for years. Those yellow stickers are everywhere. To create something that could set us out on the radio spend that you spoke about there, it did feel like a natural yet bold and slightly daunting next step. Although, yeah, being creative isn't always a risk. It does sometimes feel like a risk from the client side to change things up. But after the conversations that we initially had and, yeah, going through that process and having our hands held all the way, then, you know, we did feel confident in handing a massive part of the brand and a massive new part of the brand identity over to, you know, external members of our team, especially when we're a company that likes to hold on to it and keep it all internal, which has worked for years. But bringing you guys in and working as partners has, you know, developed something completely new that we couldn't have done without the team from both you guys' side, and has created something that's our own, it's unique, it sets us aside, and yeah, it's totally paid off, and we've created something that makes us distinguished on, you know, radio, TV, anywhere we're putting our brand anthem and brand logos.
And what about the concept itself, Paul? Talk us a wee bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, this is the concept that we created. Basically, we always think about 3 areas when we're developing any sonic brand, right from day one through to, you know, deployment and then ongoing development of the sonic brand. And the first is the concept, because without a concept, it doesn't really mean anything. And the concept has to be deeply rooted in the brand. It's got to actually mean something. So when we interviewed the key stakeholders at Arnold Clark, we wanted to find out what's the real story, what's going on, what's your brand purpose, what is it all about, what are you trying to do? And we found this really interesting thing here around stepping up. And we thought, well, this is incredibly interesting. You know, there's a moment with Arnold Clark where everyone in their life is just stepping up. You're getting a new car. That moment is incredibly special. you're delivering a really interesting experience. So how can we sonify that experience so it lives throughout the brand, throughout all those audible touch points? And then you've suddenly got something that people understand, people at Arnold Clark understand, so people who are making these materials get it, they understand it, they get their shoulder behind it. That's where most sonic brands fail, is because the people who make it don't understand it, therefore they won't like it, because they can't really like it. It's very difficult to understand it. And if they don't like it and understand it, then your consumers won't, because it won't be used consistently.
And then there's the other misconception about sonic branding as well, is that it somehow begins to limit you and where you can go and what the creative possibilities are going to be. The other two kind of pillars that we talked about there were function and flexibility, weren't they?
Yeah, so for your function and flex, so your actual function of it, you've got to design it with the thought of where's it going to be deployed now? Where's it going to be deployed in the future? And what's it going to be used on like right now? So we're looking, TV, radio, identity systems. But how can then that adapt in the future? What's coming down the road? TikTok, smart speakers, apps, all these sounds, all these sonic moments, events, retail, the actual moment you pick up your keys, the notification, your car's ready, your service film. There's all these different touch points which can be branded moments which bring you back to tell you that concept again and again. So what's happened now with Arnold Clark is essentially we've got a sonic system that has future-proofed the brand because it's flexible enough, and you'll get to hear it in a moment. There's core parts of the DNA in the sound that can be extracted and used for notifications or as an ident or as like an Intel type logo, which is probably one of the most famous sonic logos, which actually is very limited and quite a dated strategy now. But you can take all those little sounds out and deploy them anywhere, so you're constantly reminding the consumer of the brand experience.
So keeping those three pillars, which are the essence of any sonic brand, that concept, the function and flexibility of it, let's have a wee listen.
The Mustang Mach-E truly is an all-American classic reinvented for a modern era.
Fresh and exciting. So what's on the school menu today, guys?
Arnold Clark, new and used cars. Proud sponsors of This Morning. Arnold Clark. We leave the drama to 4.
There you have it. Emily, how's it been received internally, externally?
Good. Yeah, it's. I was just thinking there, we're watching that. That's everything that's going out externally, but it's so great to be used internally as well, and it brings that identity for something that to the employees to own and know about as well. So it's on the director updates, health and wellbeing videos, umpteen touch points throughout the company, as well as not just sales, but rental, ACVM, and that's where that flexibility comes into play. And using the Sonic logo on the idents has, it's just been a great opportunity to really propel it when we've first used it in our first year, really, for 2021, with the Channel 4 drama sponsorship. And then linking that all up with our airtime, the visuals being similar, and then on top of that, our Sonic logo just being thread through absolutely everything. It's unique and it stands out, but it's also neat. It's
your
nice
job
and
easier.
neat and tidy. Yeah, exactly.
So finally then, Paul, I know that one of the things that that everybody's interested in, and there's obviously a big buzz around sonic branding now, but the future of sonic branding and brand sound, where do we see that going?
Well, there was a really interesting study recently. I really suggest everyone checks it out, by Ipsos. It's called The Power of You. It shows just how powerful sonic brand assets are and how important they are for, we talked about brand salience earlier on. So this study shows that sonic branding really does work. So it's great. I've been banging on about this for 20 years. It's proof that it does work. It increases brand salience. It outperforms all other branded assets, which is really exciting. So we're seeing loads of interest. But what we've also seen is huge change in the technological environment. And there's also change in the technological environment behind the scenes. So we're able now to develop sounds with pure function in mind. And this is what gets me really excited. If you think about, I don't know, hospitality venue, entertainment venues, every man has, if they have a sonic brand, if they don't, hello. What if they could design their sound with a specific human function? So maybe they just put some relaxing music on, but does it actually make people relax? Does it actually get people ready for the film experience? What brands are talking about strategies with purpose. What if your sonic brand had purpose and you could validate and test that sound made people feel something or made people act in a certain way? You can certainly manipulate people, but you could do wonderful things. You can help alleviate pain. You can help alleviate human suffering. You can do really great things. Think about transport, alert sounds. These are all sonic moments which are developed by brands. So brands now actually have a responsibility and the ability to design sound in a completely new way. So that's really rocking my boat at the moment. Getting into the lab as well as the studio.
There you have it, the Sound of Arnold Clark. Thanks. Cheers.